Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Like Literarily. And
Woo!
and this is our third Pride Month episode that we're recording. So that is super exciting. And naturally, in honor of it being Pride Month, since Casey McQuiston, our fan favorite over here, is the has how many books? Four?
Four,
We,
I
of
believe.
course, decided to pick our third to cover. And so, if you would like to introduce which one we decided to read for this month, Alysha.
Drum roll, please. Oh, thank you. I'm very curious to see how that comes through on the audio, but we just got a lovely drum roll from Alexis. But from our New York Times best-selling author of One Last Stop and Red, White, and Royal Blue, we now have I Kissed Shara Wheeler.
Literally.
I Kissed Shara. Oh. I Kissed Shara Wheeler is a romantic comedy about chasing down what you want only to find what you need. And so our summary from inside the book cover is Chloe Green is close to winning. After her mom's moved her from SoCal to Alabama for high school, she spent the past 4 years dodging gossipy classmates in the puritanical administration of Willow Grove Christian Academy. The thing that's kept her going, winning valedictorian. Her only rival, Shara Wheeler, the principal's perfect progeny. But a month before graduation, Shara kisses Chloe and vanishes. On a furious hunt for answers, Chloe discovers she's not the only one Shara kissed. There's also Smith, Shara's longtime quarterback sweetheart, and Rory, Shara's bad boy neighbor with a crush. The three have nothing in common except Shara and the annoying cryptic notes that she has left behind. So together they must untangle Shara's trail of clues and find her. It'll be worth it if Chloe can drag Shara back before graduation to beat her fair and square for valedictorian. So thrown into this unlikely alliance, chasing a ghost through parties, break-ins, puzzles, and secrets, revealed on monogram stationery, Chloe starts to suspect there might be more to this small town than she thought. And maybe, probably not, but maybe, more to Shara too. Fierce, funny, and frank, Casey McQuiston's I Kissed Shara Wheeler is about breaking the rules, getting messy, and finding love in unexpected places.
Wow. Let's get started. That's a really good summary, actually.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with that one inside the cover. So I was like, why don't we just use this?
Yeah, I don't have my hardback because it or hardcover, paperback and hardcover, and I put that together. It's in a box somewhere, but yeah, I forgot that was the summary. That's a really good one, and I think we mention it a little bit later in the script, but this would be honestly like such a good movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like such a good teen/young adult rom-com kind of vibe, like out on Netflix or something. Like I feel like, well, probably Amazon Prime because I think Casey McQuiston's worked with them a lot, especially with Red, White, Royal Blue and Red, White, and Royal Blue 2, the movie. But I don't know. I feel like it's got the drama and the theatrics and the characters, a big cast, a lot that they discuss in it. I feel like it would be so entertaining to actually see brought to life.
Yeah, so I think that was one of my big takeaways when I read this book the first time, which it's been a year or two for me. But that was the one thing that really stuck out to me while I was reading and after. I was just like, this would make an amazing rom-com. Like, I would love to watch this play out on the screen.
Yeah, definitely. I think I read it about a year ago. I actually read it in July of 2024. So I think a couple months after you must have.
And one thing about this that I think would make it great for television is that these characters are absolutely unhinged.
Oh, so unhinged. Like the conversations they were having and the things they were doing, I was like, this is giving teen movie, because in teen movies, I feel like they do the most astronomical things. And you're like, where are your parents? That's how I felt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the way this book just like tosses the parents aside, despite one being a primary character by being the school's principal, is absolutely absurd. But just like we meet Chloe very early on, just breaking into Shara's room, and we realize she ain't even friends with this girl.
No, they're like academic rivals, which is also just such a cliche ground for teen movies and like teen young adult books and stuff. So it's like, I just remember the book starting and being like, why is this girl just in this other girl's house? Oh, they don't even know each other like that. Wait, I'm confused.
Right? Like I just, yeah, you start out with this like, what? And I feel like the what only gets bigger.
Right, because then the neighbor shows up and then you find out the neighbor's not even the boyfriend. You're like, why are you in her room, you weirdo?
And you're just like, what the cluster is this?
No.
But like, it's not like the one that ran away is any less unhinged. She is quite arguably the most unhinged out of anybody in this book.
And I also feel like what's confusing to me is the principal is the dad, right? Of Shara's dad.
Yep.
Where is the Amber Alert? These are minors.
Well, homegirl left a note saying she was leaving and you know where to find me. But
and then meanwhile, nobody actually knew where to find her until pretty much the end.
Well, that's just the thing. It's like there's no inclination like that the parents actually ever went and at least checked in on her. It's just like, yeah, they know where to find her. I guess that's enough information. But like, Shara's pulling some massive mastermind performance shit for this treasure hunt. Like the resources and creativity this girl has.
Also, low key, what are you going through that you felt like you needed to have a whole what are they called? What are they called?
Scavenger hunt? Treasure hunt?
Scavenger hunt. Thank you. I was like, what is the word? Like, what is the whole, like, what are you going through that you need a whole scavenger hunt to like find you? Like, are you not getting enough attention at home?
Well, and so I think that's part of where this is interesting, because like we have these two characters who are set up to kind of represent these different competing cultures of sorts in this space. Mm-hmm. We have Shara, so she's the one who's run away, if we haven't made that clear. She's like this perfect Southern belle. She's potentially the valedictorian. She's loved by all. It's like one of those like, if you aren't her, you want to be her. And if you don't want to be her, you want to date her. And she's just like this perfect embodiment of this young lady in this religious school in the South. And like her family's like embedded in the city. Her dad's the principal of this school. And meanwhile, Chloe, which is the one who's breaking into this person's house within like the first chapter, is like more of your stereotypical what you'd expect of a rebel in this case. Like she's rebelling against this like religious conservative culture, and she's like described as being a little punky and then like gay. And so just like pushing back against the Southern cultures there, which Casey does have a trigger warning at the beginning of the book, noting that these cultural themes are explored in the South. But like they're both rebelling against the constructs of this culture and not being able to like grow up as teens and learn who they are because of just all this pressure that's around them. And so like this rebellion isn't always in the forefront, definitely not for Shara until we get to this scavenger hunt, and she's leaving all these notes and just like revealing all these insider secrets throughout the book. But I thought it was interesting that just like they're both funneling their energy 110% at this chase for valedictorian, but like that's not the conflict. That's not what they're both worried about. Like they just want to both be them.
It was giving those videos that where it's like when your siblings but you have two different aesthetics, or when your friends and it's different aesthetics, and the one girl's room's like pink and white and frilly and soft and so feminine and whatever. Like that's Shara. Then you've got Chloe, who would be like the grungy, maybe like black room, or maybe like the darker colors, like a navy or a darker purple or whatever, with like a Paramore poster and like, Pierce the Veil and like all your punk band type stuff, maybe, Green Day, like Fight the System type thing. And just like these, just two complete opposite aesthetics is what I imagined the entire time when I was picturing Chloe and Shara. And then just the concept of, so if it's not abundantly clear, they're definitely not even just in Alabama, but they're like in a very small town in Alabama. And from my understanding, I don't know if Casey wrote this influenced off of their own particular journey being from a smaller town mixed with other people within the community that they have talked to and stuff like that. And then this book just kind of embodies all of those journeys together. But it's really interesting that you say that, because them funneling their energy into competing for valedictorian is, you're completely right. It wasn't the main conflict. The conflict was so layered in the concept of, Shara was actually, despite being known to be extremely beautiful and popular and whatever, she was extremely intelligent. And you could tell in conversations with the dad that he kind of downplayed that. I just thought that was very interesting. And I love how it was two very different girls with different journeys, different experiences, fighting for that top slot in the school. Because I think it also shows, like, no matter kind of what your background is, if you put the work in, things are achievable. And then the whole like secrets thing was crazy, because they go through this whole journey and then they're like, this person's non-binary, this person's trans, this person's actually been hooking up with this other person, this person's been hooking up with this person. You're like, what the hell's going on? Like the way that you find out about this whole, and then meanwhile, they're in a Christian school. Like, we're not even talking a normal public school in small town Alabama. We're talking about a Christian school in small town Alabama. Like, what is happening? This is insane.
Yeah, like the diversity in the school, like you said, it's slowly revealed throughout this book. But and I think part of that is because we're seeing all of this through Chloe's perspective. Like, we're following her journey of trying to track down Shara, and she has all of these stereotypes, which I think adds a really interesting bit to this book of, like, we have Chloe who is pushing back against this system because she's like, it's pigeonholing me, it's not letting me be who I want to be. But like, she's also viewing everybody else in this school in a very pigeonholed way and as part of this system and like perpetuating it. And so, like, for the first half of this book, you're really seeing all these other characters in this universe as fairly one-dimensional until Chloe shows up to this jock who's like not a good guy, but his party. And she's like, wait, Smith is nice? Jocks can be nice? And like, it's one of those where, like, as somebody, not a teenager reading this book, you just like kind of want to like hit your head and be like, ooh, what a breakthrough. Like, but we begin to see the characters get a little more fleshed out after that point. We're realizing like they're not all falling into these stereotypes, and that like Chloe is just as prone as putting people into these boxes as people have put her into boxes. And like, it'd be cool to get to see these characters a little bit more than we do in the story. But I get the point here is like, we're on the mystery hunt for Shayla. Saying her name together just keeps throwing me off, but we're on that mystery hunt for Shara Wheeler.
Right. And I thought it was really interesting, like you said, how, so I remember the book kind of starting extremely just like you said, off the wall, unhinged. We're just breaking into people's houses. But then it kind of slows down a little and you're like, I'm not really seeing what the point of all this is. What's kind of going on? And then this whole party happened. And then that's when the book really, really starts to get started. Truly, and kind of everything coming together. And I know that within every single Casey McQuiston episode I think we've ever had, I feel like between me, you, and Riley, who is not with us again this month, miss you, we've always mentioned Casey's writing as a whole. And Casey did a great job with this being so complex, but wrapped it up all very well by the time the end came. Like, by the time the end finished, but I said that weird. By the time I got to the end of the book, I was like, wait, how did she do that? Like, wait, Shara did what now? Hold on. How did that happen? And I was just like, Casey, you dang genius. Like, they get me every time.
It really, like, you can unpack this book a lot further than, like, if you just read it at, like, face value, I guess, like, the first time around. Or, like, even, I think, I was thinking about this a little bit of, like, who's the audience here? Like, yeah, is this a teen fic? Is this young adult? Is it adult? And I think what you're saying is kind of getting to it of, like, depending on your perspective and just, like, experience, you can see a lot more layers going on here. So I do think it can engage a wide range audience.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The one thing I will say, before we get a little bit more into kind of like the diversity of it and the identity exploration, which has always been one of our favorite parts about Casey McQuiston and the writing, is one note that I saw that I made the first time, and I think I definitely agree with it the second time around, is that I didn't really feel like this book had the same banter and the same deeper, more genuine connections that I felt Casey McQuiston's other books have had. Like Red, White, and Royal Blue, I feel like they were such genuine connections between the relationship Alex grows with Henry and the relationship that he had with June and Nora and the relationship they had with him. And then even the complex relationship he had with the reporter and in the movie versus even the glimpse of that came with him calling the guy from high school that the reporter in the movie was kind of inspired by. And then in One Last Stop, I also feel like even though we saw, oh my God, what was the character's name? August, I think, and Jane were the two female characters in One Last Stop. Even though August was moving into their apartment, the one couple, I feel like once they made the relationships just got so genuine and grew from there. And then I feel like in the pairing, even though the pairing was very dense in the sense of, you know, between the European travel and the culture and the art references and the food references and all that kind of stuff, Theo and Kit's relationship itself was very complex and deep. And even though they were on this tour with people they didn't really know, I feel like by the end of the book, I was like, wow, you know, they really met these people off this tour and it really impacted them and brought them back together and all this other kind of stuff. And so in this one, I just feel like it didn't feel as genuine. And maybe it's just because I didn't connect with them as much because this is like a younger adult kind of themed book with them all being teenagers versus in the other three books by Casey McQuiston, they were all in like their 20s, I think. Maybe I just didn't connect with them as much, but it could be me.
I think part of it is those books are all very much, well, the pairing in Red, White, and Royal Blue are very much about the characters' relationship. One Last Stop is about the beginning of this relationship and a little bit about identifying like their identities. This book is very much not about their relationship. Like, if this would have ended with them being like madly in love and like some kind of like huge nuance, I would have just been like, well, Shara didn't even realize she was attracted to Chloe until 2 seconds ago. They're both like 17. Like, and this book hasn't really been building up their relationship. So I feel like this is definitely more of a coming of age story than it is about how are these two people learning to like navigate
Oh, for
a
sure. I definitely
relationship
think
or like themselves. Like that kind of development, I guess. If that would I would have been probably a little bit more turned off by this book if it took that turn by the end of it.
well, I'm not saying it had to be like this, happily ever after ending. I just like the connection between all the characters as a whole. Like not even just Shara and Chloe, but like as a whole, I don't feel like I got the same feeling of like that genuine connection and banter that a lot of Casey McQuiston's other books had. But again, it could be because this is definitely way more of a coming of age story. And so maybe the concepts of the deep rooted relationships weren't as focused on. But then also, too, I think it could just be they were high school characters. And in all three of their other books, they were older like we are. So that could be it, too. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I didn't really get that banter. Like I feel like when I was reading this, I didn't giggle like, haha, that was a funny joke, or oh my God, they like are such good friends, or oh, this is just they have such a good relationship with each other, like not just romantic, but just like in general. And I feel like the only people I really felt that way about were Chloe and her moms. Um, I felt like that was probably like the most genuine interaction because even like with Chloe and George, I didn't feel like they were, which I guess makes sense because Chloe had just moved there. So, she was like this LA girl living in Alabama. So maybe that was like a reflection of that too. Like that weird kind of like on the outside looking in kind of vibe.
Yeah, I mean, Chloe was kind of a shit friend through most of this book too, which definitely doesn't help with that ability to
Right.
like see how the characters are interacting. So I definitely get that. The
Yeah.
moment I wish I could have seen for just another character insight would be Shara. I wanted to be in Shara's mind when she realized, oh, am I attracted to Chloe? Because I'm sure that hit like a brick wall.
I'll make my favorite reference. I don't think straight people think about if they're straight this much.
Yes.
I don't love Alex.
For sure. I think that thinking of like, yeah, just that like your identity and telling people, one of my favorite moments from this book actually really when I listened to it, because I did listen to it again since it had been a while since I've read it. And I didn't catch this when I had been reading it originally, but like Chloe's chatting with her moms and they're like, yeah, like you need to be whoever you are, like express yourself, live your life, you be you, whether that be straight or gay or, and Chloe yells, bye, because she's literally leaving the house. But I was just like, oh, you're also bi, and that fit that sentence. It's just like one of those, just like, oh, that's a fun play on the sentence structure and like the language there. Like her mom's already knew she's bi, and the readers know at this point that she's bi. So like it's not like some kind of sneaky foreshadowing. It's just some fun play on words.
Yeah. So speaking of diversity, because that's always been one of our favorite elements, and you've noted it here in our notes for today's episode, how much, as we recognize, Chloe came from California where, lots of diversity, lots of culture, more accepting, all that kind of stuff, and then moves to this small town in Alabama and goes to this Christian school. What kind of diversity did you grow up with? Because even though we both grew up in the Midwest, we grew up in two separate corners of Indiana.
For sure. I mean, there's not a lot of diversity in my hometown. Very, very little.
And so that's so interesting that despite us both being from the Midwest and us both being from Indiana, I am in the other corner, closer to Chicago. So we actually got a pretty decent amount of different kids and families. So granted, where majority of my high school was obviously not people of color, like 85%. I had friends from all different kinds of backgrounds. I even had friends from different religions. Like I had friends who were Muslim, so I remember learning about like how they have to fast and like all that kind of stuff really young, and it being really different from me growing up Catholic. And I remember having friends who, were Mexican or Puerto Rican or Colombian, and even like with some of my friends who were Muslim, they were all Middle Eastern, but they weren't all from the same country in the Middle East. I had a lot of Serbian friends. And I also remember having, like, to make it a little bit more relevant to I Kiss Shara Wheeler, I remember I had quite a few gay friends growing up. And I remember people making it like a big deal. And I remember just being like, why? Like, I will never forget the first gay friend that I ever had. And he lives actually like really close to me, and he rode my bus. And I remember him kind of just like alluding to it in this like very nonchalant way. We were really young. I would say like maybe middle school. And I remember him just being like, oh yeah, so like this guy I really like. And I remember like processing what he was saying and being like, okay. like it was just such a normal moment for me. And I think in my, at the time, Catholic brain might have had like a lingering moment where I was like, oh, but I just remember in my mind being like, okay. Anyways, so who's this guy? Like,
and I mean, that's children. Like,
yeah,
you have a lot less of those social constructs up. I mean, by the time you're getting to middle school, people start picking on people for like any reason. But like, as long as nobody's told you something is bad, like, why should you assume it's bad? Like, it's all learned.
And I think I remember like hearing, similar to them going to a Christian school. I remember I think hearing like things about it here and there, especially with like other heavier topics. But I just remember in the moment where quote unquote like would have tested me, I just remember being like, why should I care? Anyways, continue telling me about this guy that you like. Like it was such like a sidetrack conversation. And so I feel like for these characters, I really feel like this book would have been great for people growing up. And I've said the same thing similar to Heartstopper by Alice Osman. Like, although I personally never went through this journey myself, like I said, I have friends and family who have. And I feel like the exposure that is so heavily debated in society, meanwhile, we watch princesses kiss princes in movies and teen shows and teen movies, boys and girls kiss all the time and nobody questions it. It was just so important because I feel like I know so many people that when they finally did learn these things when they got older, they were like, oh my God, everything just clicked. And imagine if they had a book written like this, which is, I know, a huge inspiration why Casey has been cranking out these books. And books like Heartstopper. I mean, they would have been so important. And I could only imagine like what my friend or people like Shara herself would have known about themselves and what would have clicked for them so much more early on that would have prevented Shara from having to literally go and disappear off the map to go through this like existential crisis. I'm like, oh my God, who am I? I like a girl. This is crazy.
And talk about the extreme for realizing representation matters.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so before we close out with our final thoughts, I was wondering, so I shared one of the like quotes or memorable moments that stood out to me in the book. Did you have anything in particular that stood out to you?
I did, which is actually kind of one similar to yours and kind of similar to what we've been talking about. So I think it's Chloe talking to her mom. So I'm telling you, the moms and Chloe's relationship carried this. so Chloe's talking to her mom and she's like, the mom says, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just you. I'm not a nice person, she says. Chloe, her mom says, your mama and I decided long before you were born that we would let you be whoever you are, no matter who that is. And if who you are is a snarling little Pomeranian with eyes like fire, then that's who you are, darling, her mama adds. And I thought that was so hilarious because I feel like that's how my mom would describe me.
That was a great conversation in the book. I do really appreciate, like, I feel like the moms in this book are like the parents that you'd want to have for sure.
And I think one more that I liked, which is right underneath it, off of Goodreads, was you take care of yourself. That's important, her mom says, and you don't hurt anyone. But I do hurt people, Chloe insists. Do you do it on purpose? No. Okay, then you're human. And I like that too, because I think that had to do with how Chloe and Georgia were fighting, kind of throughout this whole scavenger hunt stuff. And I really do appreciate that she's like, it's not that you're never going to hurt anyone. You are, intentionally or not intentionally, but that's what makes us human. You just have to kind of learn from your mistakes and grow from it. And I feel like that was also a really good moment, especially for, you know, a younger audience and younger characters, for them to get advice like that, where it's like, you're going to hurt people your whole life, intentionally or unintentionally, but you know, that's just the human experience, and it's what you do with it after that kind of defines you. And so I really liked that too, because I know Chloe kind of had a little moment where she was like, oh my God, am I like actually kind of a bad person?
And so thinking of all these lessons that like we've got from the book and just our experiences, I both read it pretty much twice now. Mm-hmm. What are your final thoughts?
So I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars the first time I read it, and I did it with a buddy friend, and then a buddy read with a friend, sorry. And then this time around I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook really didn't do it for me. I read it the first time, you know, like I said, my I don't know if I have the hardcover or the paperback, but either one, it was like the actual physical book. So this time I would probably, I think I wrote down 3.75, but genuinely I think I'd probably give it a 4. So a little bit less than the first time around. But I think it's just because overall, like I said, I didn't get that banter that I like to see out of characters and those more genuine relationships across the board, like not just romantically. And I've reread pretty much all of Casey's books at this point, except One Last Stop. So I think the pairing I gave about 3.5 stars. This one I give about 4. And then I think One Last Stop and Red, White, and Royal Blue are about my top 2 at 5. But I'm excited for whenever Casey finally publishes book number 5. It was supposed to be based off of a character from the pairing, but they announced that they've decided something else. So I'm excited to see what that's going to be.
So I also gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I quite enjoyed it the first time I read it. When I was rereading it, yeah, I would agree. It didn't have the same rereadability as like Red, White, and Royal Blue. I wasn't quite as invested while I was prepping for this pod, but it's also like a mystery-esque book. So I'm not particularly surprised that the reread didn't land, because like it's part of that suspense that really builds up this book for the first read. So going with my first read through vibes, definitely 4.5 stars. And I would say my second favorite book, I would then say One Last Stop and then the pairing for myself personally. But Alexis stole my thunder a little bit at the beginning. But I think what made this so high for me was just reading it and enjoying it the first time through and thinking about like that movie aspect of just like, this would be a killer rom-com. I love a rom-com. I could see this in this space so easily, and I would love to watch that movie. And so I think I just literally just had a good time while I was reading this book.
I think that's a really good way to put it, and I feel like you restole your thunder right back with that, so I'm not even going to elaborate. So next month, we are A, hoping that Riley can join us, and B, we will be reading Every Summer After by Carly Fortune for the July episode. So this is actually perfect timing because One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune, which is like a prequel sequel vibe of a character from Every Summer After, actually just came out. I just got it in the mail today. Me and Alysha were just talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sitting here staring at the paperback, and it's got a radiant debut written on the cover page, quoted by our fave, Emily Henry. I'm super excited to finally read this one. Bye.
Bye.
Just doesn't land the same without the third.
I know. The trio. The trio makes it.
Stop recording. I think that's it.